time to play this cute little platformer about paper people.
2 hours later.
This game has me questioning the existence of a higher power and if it's morally right to throw away scrap paper. Did anybody else play Tearaway? Oh, no, right. Only me. Tearaway seems to be one of Sony's most forgotten first-party releases. The game was originally put out for the Vita in 2013. However, in 2015, the PS4 got a revamped port of the game known as Tearaway Unfolded. And that's all the footage that you're seeing since I don't have a Vita or the original game anymore. Tearaway was always a game on my radar. I mean, I did buy a damn Vita when I was in high school. This game must have resonated with me in some way. Maybe I was just bored of the Wii U at the time or something and needed a new system. I certainly do have a thing though for a cutesy 3D platformer. Also, knowing that the game was developed by Media Molecule, the makers of Little Big Planet, was a huge upside for me. I was curious to see what they crafted as their next release. We start off by having two faceless voices talk to us. The whole deal with referring to the player as a you is a bit awkward for sure, and maybe it just hasn't aged all that well. I don't remember being put off by this when I first played the games, but 10 plus years perhaps hasn't done that concept any favors. The game starts off incredibly slow. For real, this is probably one of the biggest criticisms of the entire thing. It's a game that boasts an amazing art style with all kinds of fancy colors and memorable visuals. Instead, we start off in a very, very dark area and our character is super limited in his abilities. I understand that the whole premise of the game is that we're supposed to be restoring light to the area and saving the town. However, it's odd to me that we have to go through this opening area and we couldn't just hop right in with the orchards. Honestly, I had no memory of this beginning chapter and it took me quite a while to bring myself to get through it. I would play for a couple minutes, get bored, wondered if I was remembering properly that I actually liked this game, and then I would go and do something else and get distracted and stop playing. Once I finally got to the orchards though, and we had some more color in the visuals and we could make our character jump, at least with the touchpad, I remembered why I liked Tearaway so much. The beginning area also really lacks any substantial music, which is a huge bummer for me. Again, I understand having some kind of a preamble, but even in the orchards we don't get the full jump ability until the end of it, so it could have easily just been the preamble. In Chapter 0, or whatever you want to call it, you just walk around and shoot a basketball in the dark while occasionally fighting a few scraps. There's no platforming and just not a whole lot of substance to this area, and it's a really, really slow start. There's not even like any annoying cutscenes or anything, it's legitimately just too much of a baby step at first, and I think it's deserving of some criticism for sure. We learn our abilities through this intro section in the orchards. We can pick up items and enemies, use the guiding light to heal the area and hypnotize the scraps. We can use the touchpad for a lot of things. We can return color to objects by taking photos of them. We can even draw on the touchpad and have our drawings show up in the game. And finally, towards the end of the orchards, we can jump with X. If you see in my gameplay where randomly a question mark will appear above Iota, it's because I keep mashing X in hopes that I can jump around. If you've ever played any games with me, you know I'm insane when it comes to spam jumping when I don't need to. I can never just run forward. I have to be jumping or dashing or something while moving. I can blame Mega Man X for that, honestly. So you just imagine how frustrating the opening sequence of Tearaway is for me, given that you have to just walk the whole time. So anyways, after the orchards, next we have to get to the top of Gibbet Hill. We start by helping out this pig who has a swollen eye. Fastest pig rider in the West, boy, I'll tell you what! I love how in this game the music adapts to the areas that you're in. It gets all quiet when we're inside and in the dark. I'll tell you though, the guiding light is really awkward when you're on a pig that is always moving, and this area does kind of suck because of it, but I like the way the music changes. Generally, the game does a solid job at staying fresh and teaching us new abilities. So, we start off with next to nothing, but then we do pile it on eventually. Once we ride the pig, then we gain the ability to control the wind with the touchpad. If you haven't caught on yet, this game takes heavy advantage of the PS4's controller features, which is expected for a first-party game, but they are done pretty well. One of the most funny and just simply satisfying abilities is when you take a squirrel, toss him into your controller, and then shoot him out. The game utilizes the speakers on the PS4 controller itself to sell the idea that you did just truly put that squirrel into the controller. In an era long after the innovations of things like the Wii, small little tricks like this were still really impressive. Sure, we had all seen motion controls before, but did you use motion controls to shoot a squirrel that you just tossed into your controller before you ever played Tearaway? So anyways, moving on with the plot, the villain that we're dealing with here is a flock of crows. They're scary and produce a lot of wind that freaks out the folks who live in Valleyfold. The crows steal the key to this secret hideout. We need to chase them down. When we do finally get the key, well, it has been smashed up anyways. Thankfully though, with our new abilities, we can access the safe area. The next task is to find the head of the scarecrow, since he's obviously going to be pretty useful in dealing with a flock of vicious crows. It's at this point too that I'll mention there are so many other features in this game that you won't see me using because I just don't have the equipment or the desire to do so. The game talks about a companion app that it had, and I have no idea if you can still access the app, and I don't really have any desire to, but that's cool, I guess. Also, if you have a camera or a microphone, you can have even further customization. I'm assuming that you can record your own voice for the Scarecrow, but I have always just gone with the default because I don't really care. Despite it not being necessary, it's still a nice touch to allow players to do so much extra with all the accessories and whatnot for the PS4. Once we give the Scarecrow his head back, it is on to Gibbet Hill. Yeah, already, the final area of the game. That's another thing about Tearaway. It's incredibly short, but I don't mind that. And if you follow the channel for a while, you'll know that I'm totally okay with a short game. Gibbet Hill throws everything at us while still teaching us about new enemies. This area is great, but it's time for the finale. We're going to shoot Iota back up into the giant hole in the sky.
No.
What?
I can see where this is going. A thing we need. An unexpected twist.
You can't do that.
We need a new story. One with mysteries and danger. I know just the place.
Where are you going? That's not fair. Come back.
Oh wait, we need to have some twists and turns apparently in our story. Well, I welcome it, because now the game throws even more new mechanics our way. I absolutely love that even well over the halfway mark, we're still learning and experiencing new attacks and forms of movement while carrying over those that we had learned earlier in the game. We get a little companion guy, and we get to give him a name. So obviously the pick is Joe Mama. Now we get some sections of the game that require us to use both Iota and Joe Mama. The depth of all the different control schemes and ways to maneuver in this game just keep unfolding. The whole Sogport section of the game is where we start to really delve into the depths of what is causing all this mayhem. My favorite parts of the entire game are the sections where we go through the laboratory and we put an end to the scraps once and for all. We started off this game so happy and frolicking through the orchards, but now we are in the depths of this lab trying to figure out the source of evil. Once we get to the bottom of the scraps and learn that they're actually friendly, the game feels like it's over. Again. However, we actually still have a ton left, but you would never know that with the way that the game is presented, at least the first time. I do want to take a minute to highlight just how cool the Between the Pages section of the game is, and why I think this should just be the ending. We have two main areas, Valleyfold and Sogport. We defeat the scraps once and for all, and then we're pushed into Purgatory. What really makes this area feel so endgame for me is the second theme that plays here. If you listen closely, you can hear it remixing a lot of music from earlier in the game. It's particularly easy to pick out the Gibbet Hill theme, and also the theme from the Orchards. Going through this somewhat challenging area with the dark atmosphere and absolute rockin' tune that remixes songs from earlier in the game, it just feels like a proper ending. However, the game continues on for quite a bit past this point. The first time we get a false ending is a neat diversion from what possibly felt like the end of the game. However, there are like 5 different false endings in Tearaway. From the moment you go on Gibbet Hill, the game constantly talks about ending our story. Meanwhile, it just keeps going and going and going. Although this game is still an incredibly short 8 hours, it feels like it goes on for so long because they keep telling you over and over that it's about to end, even when it has so many chapters remaining. I don't mind one false ending, maybe 2, but literally every single chapter feels like it should be the last one after you defeat the scraps. You go through like 5 different versions of Purgatory, and you're always thinking to yourself, okay, this is it, right? Eventually, it does end, but dang, it's the longest feeling 8-hour game because of the way it's paced. There are some good parts about the later chapters of the game, however, the pacing of it all just feels a bit off. Just as speculation here, perhaps the original team wanted to end the game earlier, but were forced to elongate it since it was such a short game in the first place. I have no evidence to back up that claim other than how it feels to play Tearaway. Also, once the game goes all in on using the 6-axis part of the controller, the frustration certainly builds. It's a cool idea to control platforms with the motion controls, but it is just so sensitive. The slightest movement sends the platforms flying around, likely causing you to die. The thing about it all though is that there's almost ever no real consequence for dying. When you fall off or get killed by the scraps, you just respawn pretty much exactly where you were last. So it's not really a game that you beat with any amount of triumph, it's just an experience. And given that the game literally turns into Journey for a moment, I get what they were going for. However, it still keeps track of how many deaths you had and throws it in your face at the end. So there it is, we made it to the big hole in the sky after all, despite thinking we were there 6 other times in the game. The ending isn't much, but it doesn't have to be. This game is certainly one that feels like it's more about the journey itself than the ending. Other than just being able to kind of zombie yourself through the game with little punishment, there are some other things that keep me going. The game does have a great soundtrack. However, there can also be some stretches with very little music or just no music at all. I know they're creating environments here, but it would have been nice to get maybe a little more. Also, I just need to take a moment. I absolutely freaking love the art style of Tearaway. It's just so welcoming and charming. Even the deep dark depths of Sogport have a level of comfort to them visually. And it's cool when you get to create several of the visuals yourself. But I'll tell you this, if you thought drawing with a mouse or a Wii remote was hard, well, try drawing on the PS4 touchpad. It's brutal. However, drawing a big rectangle and then just cutting it out with the knife is a bit better. Still, the game is begging to have a Wii U gamepad instead of a PS4 touchpad. I know that the Vita provided some better surfaces for these features, so maybe they should have just reconsidered this whole feature for the PS4 port. Overall, it's a cutesy game with some deeper themes later on that you might not have been expecting. I know I offered up some criticism despite calling it maybe a masterpiece, but no game is perfect. Honestly, I have a lot of nostalgia for this one as it reminds me of finishing up my time in high school because that's around the time that the PS4 port came out. Also, I'm quite literally the only person I have ever heard care about either the Vita or the PS4 version of this game. Sure, some of my friends who are in tune with gaming have aspirations to play it one day, but nobody, I mean nobody else in my entire life goes, oh yeah, I played Tearaway, what a charming little platformer, when I ask about it. Everyone just says, yeah, I know about it, looks alright, maybe I'll give it a shot one day. I just genuinely think that this game had such an unfair chance because it was a Vita game. Sure, the PS4 port is obviously a thing that was meant to remedy that cruel fate, but I do think it was too little too late for Tearaway. So anyways, thanks for watching.